We should note that the term Jim Crow comes from an early 19th century caricature, a stereotype developed on stage by actor Thomas Dartmouth Rice in the 1820s. In the wake of Jim Crow, there appeared another major black stage figure named Zip Coon. While Jim Crow was in tatters and rags, an example of the Sambo happy-go-lucky figure and a rural character, Zip Coon was more of an urban black dandy. Rice and his Jim Crow were part of early minstrelsy, with white actors performing in blackface, mimicking and mocking African American vernacular. The coon songs and minstrel shows really developed in the United States in the post-Civil War era. The derogatory use of the term coon for black Americans did not come in widespread use until the early 1880s. But the coon songs were a veritable craze in the 1880s for over a decade, depicting blacks as watermelon lovers and chicken thieves. By and by, many coon songs did not only feature the happy-go-lucky, loyal Sambo or darky, but more ominous figures sporting razors, devoid of honesty or personal honor, and given to drunkenness. They were also lazy, a clear sign of their being devoid of the WASP work ethics, and almost always sensuous and libidinous. Portraying blacks as dangerous served to justify segregation, served to justify the control of black people. This was an obvious effect of the post-1877 turn to more dangerous and threatening black figures in the collective imagination. For Dorman, in Shaping the Popular Image of Post-Reconstruction American Blacks, the coon song phenomenon of the Gilded Age, essay published in 1988, quote, "The immense popularity of the coon image nationwide merely reflected the ongoing commitment to racist assumptions that underlay the system of American apartheid in which blacks were maintained in subordinate and subservient roles." End of quote, page 465. The coon figure of the post-Reconstruction era performed over and over again presented and strengthened stereotypes in white Anglo-American minds. Blacks became those caricatures. They were, in the eyes of whites, the simple-minded comic buffoons and the dangerous animals that should be restrained. Again, as Southern Democrats slowly regained control of the South in the 1890s and strove to overthrow both white and Northern Republican rule and what they saw as black political power, a new image was formed. White elite Southerners, envisioning themselves as descending from Anglo-Saxon cavaliers, looked to an ideal where chivalrous gentlemen should protect both pure white women and white civilization. Pitted against the purity and superiority of the white race was the Negro, now seen as retrogressing towards a primitive stage and consequently rising in bestiality. A host of racist literature vented freely the threat posed by the beastly Negroes, as exemplified by such titles as The Negro a Beast by Charles Carroll, published in 1900, or later on, The Negro, a Menace to American Civilization by Robert Shufelt, published in 1907. Between 1865 and 1900, popular representations of blacks had gone from the happy-go-lucky darkies or Sambos of a supposed golden age prior to the Civil War to Ethiopian monsters who endangered the superiority of Western white civilization. As the editor of the Atlanta Constitution newspaper, Henry W. Grady, put it in 1888 in a speech delivered in Dallas, quote, "External pressure but irritates and impedes those who would put the Negro race in supremacy, would work against infallible decree, for the white race can never submit to its domination, because the white race is the superior race. But the supremacy of the white race of the South must be maintained forever, and the domination of the Negro race resisted at all points and at all hazards, because the white race is the superior race." This is the declaration of no new truth. It has abided forever in the marrow of our bones, and shall run forever with the blood that feeds Anglo-Saxon hearts. End of quote. As Jackson Lears has shown in Rebirth of a Nation, one of the commonly held ideas was that the black man, no longer controlled by the white master, was in fact retrogressing towards animal instincts, an argument that served as basis for the hosts of lynchings that spread across the country in the early 1890s. Nathaniel Shaler basically embraced the idea of retrogression when he wrote in 1884 in his essay The Negro Problem, published in the magazine Atlantic Monthly, quote, "I hold it to be clear that the inherited qualities of the Negroes to a great degree unfit them to carry the burden of our civilization; that their present Americanized shape is due in large part to the strong control to which they have been subjected since the enslavement of their blood; that there will naturally be a strong tendency for many generations to come for them to revert to their ancestral traditions. Next, I hold it to be almost equally clear that they cannot as a race for many generations be brought to the level of our own people." End of quote, page 703. Others yet did not attempt to couch in scientific terms their abhorrence of miscegenation and the necessity to preserve the superior white race. They resorted to the most extreme violence. In the South, the Ku Klux Klan, established 1866, the Knights of the White Camellia, and other brotherhoods and vigilante organizations, relying on the myth of the pure Anglo-Saxon origins of white America, were just some of those who perpetrated the waves of lynchings in the late 1880s and between 1897 and 1906. The record point was reached in 1892, when 69 whites and 162 black people were lynched throughout the nation. Black men were lynched, tortured, burned to death, and emasculated for different reasons. They had not been courteous to a white man, they had dared to vote. But mostly, this form of mob violence took its roots in the fear of black abuse of white women. As James Kimball Vardaman reportedly said during his 1900 campaign for governor of Mississippi, quote, "We would be justified in slaughtering every Ethiop on the earth to preserve unsullied the honor of one Caucasian home." End of quote. Quoted in Louis Gossett, Race, The History of an Idea, page 271. 3.4. Reaching for Civilization, the Question of Education and Progress. In similar fashion to the question of Indian education, whether or not blacks could be educated was a highly debated question. Here again, reformers and the American population wavered in grades between a negative answer, a yes but, and a positive answer. For most, including some blacks themselves, it was essential that they receive a manual or industrial education, and a more literary or full humanities curriculum was useless. Others believed that blacks could be fully improved. Such was the case of Hampton's Colonel Armstrong. William Matthews, in an essay entitled The Negro Intellect, published in the North American Review in July 1889, that you have on your handout, clearly stated his views that the Negro was capable of rising to the highest levels of civilization through education, giving several examples of such achievements.